In the spring of 1241, a king fled his own kingdom on horseback. He had just watched his army, around 40,000 men, the finest cavalry in Central Europe, be annihilated in a single morning. Behind him, his cathedral city burned. Ahead of him, nothing, no allies, no reinforcements, no walls. Between Bela IV, king of Hungary, and the Atlantic Ocean, there was no army capable of stopping what was coming. And yet, they stopped. Not because they were beaten, not because they ran out of soldiers, not because some heroic European army stood in their way. They stopped, and then they left. And 785 years later, historians still cannot fully agree on why. This is the story of the day that nearly ended European civilization. And the mystery of why it didn't. To understand what arrived at Hungary's border in 1241, you need to understand what the Mongol Empire actually was. By that spring, the Mongols controlled more territory than any empire in history. They had started as a fractured collection of steppe tribes, nomadic, illiterate, and largely unknown to the wider world. Within a century of Genghis Khan's rise, they had destroyed the Jin dynasty in China, destroyed the Khwarezmian Empire across Persia, and reduced the most powerful Islamic cities in the world to rubble. This was not a horde in the romantic sense, a wild, uncontrollable tide of horsemen. The Mongol military was the most technically sophisticated fighting force on the planet. They had Chinese siege engineers. They had Persian administrative experts. They had a dedicated intelligence service that scouted enemy territory years in advance. And in 1241, they turned their full attention to Europe. The man who planned the invasion was named Subutai. He was not a prince, not a Khan. He was a general, the greatest military mind the Mongol Empire ever produced. By 1241, he had already commanded more than 20 campaigns across Asia. He had conquered more territory than Alexander the Great. And for at least a year before a single Mongol soldier crossed into Hungary, Subutai had been reading Europe. His agents moved through Poland, Hungary, and Germany as merchants. They counted soldiers. They mapped roads. They identified where the political fault lines were, who hated whom, which kingdoms would not come to each other's aid. What they found was not a unified Christendom. What they found was a continent of competing petty kings, each more concerned with his neighbor than the horizon. Subutai built his plan around that weakness. Invasion began in February 1241, and it came from 4 directions at once. A northern force swept into Poland. Its job was not to conquer, it was to prevent Poland from sending troops south into Hungary. A southern force drove through Transylvania and into Hungary's flank. And the main army, commanded by Batu Khan and Subutai, smashed through the fortified Carpathian passes in a single forced march. The Hungarian border guard at Vereki Pass was annihilated on March 12th. The defenders hadn't expected to face the full weight of the Mongol main army. They were simply the first to discover what was coming. In Poland, the northern Mongol force was executing its mission with identical precision. On Palm Sunday, they burned Krakow, the Polish capital, gone. By April 9th, the northern force had assembled near the town of Legnica, where Duke Henry II, the Pious, had gathered every soldier he could find. Polish knights, German knights, crusading orders, Teutonic knights, Hospitallers, Templars, a coalition that represented the military power of northern Christendom. Henry was waiting for one more army, King Wenceslas of Bohemia, just days away with a vast Bohemian force. He never came. The Mongols at Legnica used their classic tactic, feigned retreat. They appeared to break and run. Henry's coalition pursued. and rode directly into an encirclement. Duke Henry II of Silesia was killed in the rout. His body was beheaded. His head was placed on a Mongol spear and carried around the walls of Legnica to break the defenders' will. That was April 9th. 2 days later, 300 miles to the south, the main Mongol army found the Hungarian royal force camped at the river Sajo. The timing was not coincidence. Legnica had to fall before Mohi. Wenceslas's Bohemian army, the only force large enough to reinforce Bela, had to be blocked and neutralized. Subutai had planned the sequencing across the entire continent. Europe was not fighting an army, it was fighting a system. Bela IV had assembled around 40,000 men. Estimates vary, but this was a serious medieval army, knights, archers, infantry, supported by the full military nobility of Hungary. They had arrived at the river Sajo on April 10th and made camp on the western bank. The stone bridge was guarded. They were confident. What Bela didn't know, what no one in his camp knew, was that Subutai had disappeared. Sometime in the night of April 10th, an entire Mongol army corps had detached from the main force and moved south. They were searching for a ford, a place to cross the river unseen, miles downstream from the bridge Bela was guarding. Bela watched the bridge. He didn't watch the south. At dawn on April 11th, Batu Khan hit the bridge with everything. The Hungarians held. Their crossbowmen and archers were effective. The bridge was narrow, and Mongol cavalry couldn't mass. For a moment, it looked like the defense might hold. Then something happened that no European army had seen before. Batu's artillery opened fire. Catapult-launched projectiles, probably naphtha-based, definitely explosive, in a way European soldiers had never witnessed, began landing among the Hungarian defenders. The bridge broke, not the stone, the men on it. As Batu's forces crossed, the Hungarian commanders tried to regroup. They were already pulling their lines back to form a new defensive perimeter when the screaming started from the south. Subutai had found his ford. The Hungarians were now being attacked from the front and from the south simultaneously. The encirclement was closing. Men looked for an escape route, and they found one. On the western side of the Mongol encirclement, there was a gap, an obvious, visible gap, unguarded, open ground. This was not a mistake. It was Subutai's doctrine. The Mongols called it the Golden Bridge. Never fully encircle a desperate enemy, because desperate men fight to the last, and that costs you. Instead, leave them a way out. Let them think they've broken through. Let them run. Because running men don't fight back. 40,000 men ran through the Golden Bridge and ran directly into the third Mongol force, waiting in the open ground beyond. For miles. They were shot down for miles. Among the dead in the rout, the Archbishop of Kalaksa, bishops, abbots, the military nobility of Hungary, an entire generation of church leadership lost in a single campaign. Bela IV escaped on horseback. He rode west, then south, into Croatia. A Mongol detachment, specifically ordered by Batu to kill the king, chased him across the country and out to the Adriatic coast. He survived by island hopping along the Dalmatian shoreline for months. His kingdom did not survive so cleanly. For 10 months after Mohi, the Mongols did not leave Hungary. They stayed. They moved systematically, town by town, settlement by settlement. Modern estimates vary widely, but some historians suggest as many as half of Hungary's population, of roughly 2 million people, died during this period. Not all by the sword. Famine, disease, and displacement in winter completed what the army began. Bela sent messengers across Europe, to France, to the Holy Roman Emperor, to every Christian ruler within reach. He described in these letters the scale of what was happening. He begged. Pope Gregory IX promised a crusade, then he died in August 1241 before it launched. No French army came, no German emperor came. The crusading orders were occupied elsewhere. Hungary was alone. By winter 1241, the Mongols were probing westward. Raiding parties reached the outskirts of Vienna. Smaller Austrian settlements burned. Scouts reported the horde advancing toward the German principalities. Western Europe had no army capable of stopping them. The military orders were insufficient. The German princes had not yet mobilized. France was completely unprepared. What happened next is the question that has occupied historians for nearly 8 centuries. One morning in the spring of 1242, the fires were gone. The Mongol army, the force that had just destroyed the 2 largest armies in Central Europe, had packed up and marched east. They never came back. 3 explanations have been offered. None is complete. The first explanation, Ogedei Khan, the great Khan, Genghis's chosen successor, died in December 1241. By Mongol law, all princes of the blood were required to return to Karakorum to elect a new leader. Batu Khan was a prince of the blood. He had no choice. This is the clean answer. It fits the timeline. It gives Europe's survival a cause. But some historians are skeptical. Could news of a death in Mongolia, thousands of miles away, really have reached Hungary and triggered a withdrawal within weeks? Medieval communication was slow. The timing is suspicious. The second explanation, climate. In 2016, researchers published climate data reconstructed from Carpathian tree rings. What they found was striking. The years 1238 to 1242 were unusually cold and wet across the region. The early spring thaw of 1242 turned the Hungarian plain into marshland. A Mongol army was built around mobility, tens of thousands of horses, supply lines that depended on open ground. Marshland was not just inconvenient, it was strategically paralyzing. An army that cannot move cannot be fed. An army that cannot be fed dies. The third explanation, cost. Recent archaeological work at Mohi and across Hungary has found something the medieval sources didn't admit. Mongol casualties were significantly higher than the standard account suggests. The campaign was expensive. Hungary, even in defeat, had cost the Mongol army. And beyond Hungary lay Germany. Dense forests, countless stone castles, wetter weather that would destroy the composite Mongol bow. Then France. Then more forests. Then the sea. For a horse nomad empire, the logic of conquest was always, we take what we can use. What could they use west of Hungary? The steppe, the open grassland that the Mongol way of life required, ended at the Hungarian plain. Germany had no steppe. France had no steppe. There was nothing there that the Mongol Empire could occupy and rule in the way it had ruled the vast territories of Asia. The most honest answer may be all 3. The Khan died. The ground turned to mud. And even if neither of those things had happened, Europe west of Hungary may have been assessed by the same cold strategic intelligence that planned the invasion as not worth the cost. When Bela IV returned to his kingdom in 1242, he found a country that barely existed. Up to 1 million people dead, fields abandoned, cities gone. The architecture of a medieval kingdom erased in 10 months. He wrote to the new pope, Thir Didaboriavros in 1253, describing what had happened and what he had received from Europe's Christian rulers in response. In his letters to Rome, Bela described what he had received from Europe's rulers in response to his pleas. His words, translated from the Latin, cut simply, we have received from all sides merely words, no support in our great affliction from any Christian ruler or nation in Europe. Merely words. Bela spent the rest of his reign building more than 60 new stone castles across Hungary. Some historians count many more. He rewrote the rules of land tenure, giving barons and bishops the right to raise private armies and build private fortifications. A radical decentralization driven by one lesson: wooden walls and a central army cannot survive what he had survived. When the Mongols returned in 1285, they found a different country. The castle network held. The second Mongol invasion failed. He had learned. But the scar was permanent. Historians who study Hungarian national identity trace the country's deep cultural sense of isolation, the conviction that it stands alone, that the wider world will not help, that it cannot rely on alliances, directly to 1241, to those letters that received merely words. That wound is still visible. Here is what the standard account of the Mongol invasion of Europe gets wrong. It frames this as a story Europe survived. Europe did not survive. Hungary was destroyed, its population halved, its cities burned, its church leadership killed, its king reduced to a fugitive on the Adriatic. What Europe's western kingdoms survived, France, Germany, England, they survived because they were never attacked. And they were never attacked not because of anything they did, but because the Mongols made a strategic calculation that they were not worth the cost. Paris had no idea. London had no idea. The German princes were still debating whether to mobilize when the Mongols were already leaving. The absence of Mongol rule over Western Europe is not a triumph. It is an accident, a convergence of a dead Khan, a muddy spring, and the simple fact that the steppe ends in Hungary. Subutai understood something that Europe's historians have spent 8 centuries obscuring. The Mongol Empire was not stopped at the gates of Europe. It assessed Europe, took what it found useful, and went home. That's a different story. It's a harder story, but it's the true one. The river Sajo still runs through eastern Hungary. The bridge is gone. The battlefield is farmland. There is a small museum in the town of Mohi, and if you visit on a quiet Tuesday in April, you will likely be alone. 785 years ago, this was the place where European civilization almost ended, where a general named Subutai built a trap so perfect that 40,000 men fell into it in a single morning, where a king fled west and wrote letters that received merely words, where the most powerful army in the world turned around and left the rest of us to wonder why. The Mongols didn't lose Europe. They just decided not to keep it. If you want to go deeper, there's a full video waiting on the general who planned all of this, Subutai, the man who conquered more territory than any commander in history, and almost no one knows his name. It's on the channel. And if this video earned it, subscribe. Chronicle Zero posts every week. We'll see you there.